Solid as a rock, tougher than granite, and seemingly impervious to the sands of time, there's nothing quite like a Mercedes G-Class. It remains politically incorrect and hugely expensive, but it's now a much more credible alternative to less unique super luxury large SUVs, thanks to modern era engineering adopted in a way that hasn't diluted this Geländewagen's unique character.
The Mercedes objective with this new era G-Class was to make it viable as an only car, something the older model never was. Now you'd think this one might still struggle in that regard too. After all, conceptually, it remains pretty old hat, built on a solid ladder-framed chassis and featuring an old-fashioned live rear axle and a prodigious 2.5-ton curb weight. And yet, what we've got is something quite different, well, for a G-Wagen anyway. And that's thanks to the fact that the front suspension, the steering system, the gearbox and the engines are all completely new. So, you might be surprised to learn, is all the familiar-looking bodywork, and it's now fashioned with copious amounts of aluminium, which accounts for much of the 170 kilo reduction in curb weight. It's all enough to transform the way this Geländewagen tackles the only kind of terrain it previously struggled to conquer: tarmac. Now, if you happen to remember the way that the previous version of this car lumbered and lurched about, then you'll find the accurate rack and pinion electromechanical steering of this revitalised version to be a revelation. It still doesn't handle like a Range Rover, but it's no longer embarrassed by one either. There are two engines on offer: the 585 horsepower 4-litre twin-turbo V8 of this top Mercedes-AMG G63 petrol version, and the 326 horsepower 2.9-litre straight-six diesel of the alternative G400D. The latter variant manages 26.4 mpg on the combined cycle and 281 grams per kilometre of CO2. Both derivatives use a new 9G-tronic auto gearbox, and they feature a dynamic select driving mode system that offers an extra slippery setting for greasy tarmac use. And there are also specific G-mode settings for the off-road use that remains this Geländewagen's true comfort zone. It's still the only series production car with 3 fully locking differentials for the rear, the centre and the front. Plus, there's a proper low-range gearbox and up to 241 millimetres of ground clearance. As a result, almost nothing that you could attempt will defeat it. By anyone's reckoning, this is an unlikely fashion accessory. Yet, despite a set square shape with the aerodynamic qualities of a semi-detached house, that is exactly what this G-Class has become. This modern era version is still known by brand loyalists as a W463 series model, but it's very different to earlier Geländewagens that shared that classic designation, the completely new body being 53mm longer, 64mm wider and 15mm taller than before, and built of different grades of steel, with aluminium now adopted for the wings, the bonnet and the doors. As ever though, it's still handcrafted for Mercedes by Magna Steyr in Graz, Austria, each G taking over 140 hours to produce. Time to take a seat in the cabin. Well, you certainly know you're in a new era G-Wagen here, primarily because this modern model features the widescreen cockpit display that we've previously seen in all of Mercedes' more conventional large models, with a 12.3-inch central command infotainment screen bonded seamlessly to a digital instrument display of the same size. A more characteristic G-Wagen feature is this huge, great old-fashioned dash-mounted grab handle. Plus, to build on the exterior theme, there are little square dash-top speakers to reference the front indicators, and there are circular vents to replicate the shape of the headlights. Build quality, that's vastly improved, and it's a lot more spacious than a G-Wagen ever has been before. As before, the driving position is satisfyingly high and commanding, and there's virtually no distance at all from the dash to the upright windscreen, all of which is very much a part of the old school feel. Okay, let's move rearwards. Sitting back here, you'd never know you were in an SUV that was nearly 5 metres long, but it is vastly more passenger friendly than it used to be, with plentiful headroom and the fresh platform freeing up a massive 150 millimetres more legroom. Forget any thoughts of being able to have fold-out third-row seating. You'd need much greater interior space efficiency than this car can provide in order to be able to accommodate that. As it is, there's just about enough space back here for a half reasonably sized boot. Because of the tailgate-mounted spare wheel, you have to access it via this inconvenient side-hinged arrangement. That's particularly awkward for markets like ours that drive on the left. Once everything's opened up, you'll find 667 litres of space. It's thoroughly modern, but all the things that make a G-Class special and unique remain intact. Now, we could have been served up a lifestyle-orientated copy of the original, but this remains the real thing. It's at home anywhere, from Afghanistan to the Amazon, from Kensington to the King's Road, and it is, quite simply, unique.